I think there's a chance that my depth chart for Auburn football entering spring is different than yours.
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me on a Friday, it's a War Rapport Wednesday on a Friday, Mike G of the War Rapport hanging out with us. And Mike G, look, spring is practically here because Auburn's starting so early. It's fun. We're starting to get that, that feeling in the air here on the plains. But I think heading into spring, Mike G, I think the depth chart's actually going to look a little bit different than what some people are projecting. And I think one of the bigger takeaways from all of the action that happened in the transfer portal, right? Hugh Freeze brings in 12 guys. And one of the bigger ones, as far as ratings go, was Justin Rogers.
That's right.
Former 5-star from Kentucky, defensive lineman, big boy. And I think the storyline was, it's him or Jason Jones at that nose position. And just talking to folks, Mike G, I think there's a real chance that they both start along the defensive front. Jason Jones staying at nose, Rogers at that defensive tackle 3 technique type role, which that's a lot of beef. And then I didn't really buy that as an option because of where Marcus Harris is. He's so good in that interior, that junk or 3 technique, whatever you want to call it. But it sounds like Mike G, Coach Garrett, Jeremy Garrett on the defensive line, is looking at this front where it's Jason, Rogers, and then we've got Marcus Harris at defensive end. What are your thoughts on that?
Listen, you got to get your best players on the field. And in my conversations with Coach Garrett, it did feel like he was leaning that direction. Now, he didn't give away the story when I talked to him, Zach, but he did kind of hint at, Jason is a coach's guy. Listen, Jason Jones is a coach's guy. He's worked hard in the weight room. He absorbs information like you would want one of your leaders to do it. He's becoming more of a vocal leader. He was quieter his first year right here. Now
he was coming in, right? It's hard to just come in, especially as like a defensive lineman. Quarterback, you can kind of do that. Maybe middle linebacker or safety, you could probably do that. But as a defensive tackle, it's kind of hard just to win over a room, instantly coming from another place. So, it's a different Jason Jones, I think, this offseason.
Definitely. He's getting healthy. He played with the arm thing, good majority of last season.
Yeah, he had a brace that would be the size of a knee brace for most of us.
Yeah, it was just, he's getting healthy and, again, becoming more of a vocal leader on this team. So Jeremy Garrett has taken notice of that. But then you got Justin Rogers. You got this monster coming in from Kentucky, right? And I think that they're the same way, we look at offensive line and you think, you want to get your athletes on the field and you're shuffling guys around. I think he's just looking at both of these guys and saying, hey, I'm going to play both of these guys. Now, here's my thing. On defense, and it's common, Auburn has done it. The better schools are doing it. They're going to rotate a lot of guys. So just because you're not, in the one deep, doesn't mean you're not going to play. They're going to play a lot of guys on defense to stay fresh and rotate those guys out. So, look for both of those guys. I think I'm with you to make a big impact on defensive line next year for, our Ron Roberts defense. So it's going to be exciting to watch. I like Jason Jones a lot, but obviously we're looking forward to seeing what Justin Rogers can do coming from a place like Kentucky that is clearly inferior in terms of everything to Auburn. Auburn's just a better place, man. We got better food. The women are better. The weather's better, right? You know what I mean? It's Auburn.
Hopefully the coaching is better and the football is better. Hey, that's been questionable over probably the last 2 years. We'll see if that changes. I think it will. In regards to the rotation, though, I think when you look at it, how it's going to be listed on depth charts, I think it's fun to see because Lawrence Johnson, the transfer, he's probably Jason Jones's backup nose.
For sure.
And then the backup 3 technique, I guess, or defensive tackle, however they're going to list it, after Rodgers right now, assuming all of what we've been told is true in regards to that, I guess that's Nasili Kite. I think that would probably be him slotted back there, the transfer from Maryland. And then I guess the backup defensive end behind Marcus Harris right now, you could put Zacchaeus Walker there, but my guess, if I just had to guess what a projection would be for that, it's Jeffrey Mba that would be back to Marcus Harris, which I would not have expected because I thought Marcus Harris would be the defensive tackle. But if he's playing more defensive end, I think that's really, really fun to see.
Yeah, like, listen, we got a chance to ask Ron Roberts about the type of defense that he's going to play, right? He talked a lot about having 3 down linemen and then having that hybrid edge guy.
The jack.
Yeah, essentially you can play a 3 technique and, do some different things there on the defensive line. So there's going to be an opportunity for a lot of these guys to see the field. And, Mba is another one that I think sometimes people are just like Jeffrey Mba, Thanos, right? And then he gets lost in the conversations when we start talking about Jason Jones and Justin Rogers coming in. But he's another one that could be a high impact player for this defense. Now, you almost have to be like 3 deep on defensive line. It feels like in today's day and age with injuries and,
to be good.
The rotation and trying to keep guys fresh because offenses are so prolific now, Zach. The running backs are good. Like, offensive linemen have become more athletic that if you cannot stay fresh on defensive line, you're going to have a hard time in today's SEC. So I expect Mba to have a big impact or at least be in a position to have a big impact early and often in this season, no matter where he's at on the depth chart. So just because we're not talking about a guy at the 1 deep doesn't mean that he's not going to play and he's not going to be an impact player for Jeremy Garrett in his position group.
Yeah, like, do you want Jason Jones and Justin Rogers? And I'm actually not going to say Marcus Harris here because I think he's just so good. Like, do you want those guys playing 65 snaps a game?
Right.
No. The answer is no. You don't. And it's nothing against those guys. It's just, it's hard to move that big of a body efficiently over and over and over again. So you want to have that rotation in. And I think that's kind of why Auburn's defense broke down over the course of the game and people wanted to kind of hate on the talent. And is the talent perfect? No. But the talent's better than what we saw in fourth quarters a year ago. And correct. I think Hugh Freeze in this system will certainly show that.
Well, scheme
wins. Scheme matters. Wins. Talent matters. It all matters. But the scheme was worse than the talent was a year ago.
That's 100% a fact, right? And the scheme will put these guys, I think, potentially in a better situation to make plays and highlight their talent. And, it's crazy how you can have, all the talent and you can just scheme them down to 2 stars.
Yep.
Pretty much on the field. So I'm expecting I'm expecting them to turn that around this season.
Yep. Tired. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you're exhausted in the fourth quarter, you're probably going to lose. All right, Mike G, let's take a stab at what we think the starting offensive line will be at the end of spring. And also, are we making a wrong assumption about the quarterback position? Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook is America's #1 sportsbook. So, of course, that's where you want to check out all of your odds, props, and lines. Looking at the lines this morning for the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship this year, if you're feeling good about the Tigers being on the right side of the bubble and getting in, which I think after beating Ole Miss earlier this week, that certainly seems likely despite a tough final 3 games coming up. But Auburn right now, plus 10,000. So if you're feeling good, if you think Auburn's about to go on a run, be sure to head over to FanDuel to do that. And just for the sake of conversation, Houston, the favorite at plus 650, Kansas right behind them at plus 800. And if you hate yourself and want to bet on Alabama, they are plus 900. Be sure to check out our friends at FanDuel. They've got bonus bets going on right now, or no sweat first bet. You can check it all out and get more information at FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Mike G of the War Rapport. Let's talk about the offensive line and just take a stab at it. And I'll give you mine, and you tell me where you think I'm right or wrong, and we can kind of jump off from there. So From left to right, I've been very, very clear, very, very consistent. Gunner Britton, the transfer from Western Kentucky, is a difference maker for this offense. Not just the offensive line, not just left tackle, the entire offense, maybe the entire team. I think he's that good. I think he's an NFL caliber left tackle that Auburn just scooped up, and we're all just happy with it. And he's eating the Baumhauers all the time now. Very, very happy. Good things. At left guard, I think it's Jeremiah Wright. I do think it'll be fun to see if they move him around, but that's the only place that he played on the offensive front a year ago. Now, do we trust last year's staff in regards to how they evaluated personnel and where they put it? I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if they moved them around some, but I think the best educated guess is for Jeremiah Wright to be at left guard. At center, you got to think that they'll go with the guy that they got later in the portal period, Avery Jones, the tackle or the longtime starting center from East Carolina. And then the right side of the line is where I think it gets a little interesting, Mike G, because I think it's Dillon Wade and I think it's Xavier Miller. I just don't know who's where. They both kind of over their recruitments were like, I'm a tackle. I'm only a tackle. You must love me as a tackle, right? And I'm cool with that, right? I'd rather be a tackle than a guard too, but sometimes like you just got to get on the field. And so I can make the argument either way if you're going to put Wade or Xavier Miller on that side of the ball. But right now, I will go with Wade at right guard and Xavier Miller, the JUCO kid, at right tackle. That's my initial guess as we go into spring.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to that. I think that a lot of, for these quarterbacks, for these right-handed quarterbacks especially, left tackle is the position that we're going to be watching. The guy protecting the quarterback's blind side is going to be super important. And with as much pressure as they gave up on the quarterback last year, Zach, that's something that they have to solve in this year's scheme. So Hugh Freeze had mentioned that it was really difficult to evaluate quarterbacks because the quarterbacks were running for their life, right? And so figure out this offensive line shuffle is going to be one of the most, if not the most important task that Auburn football has to accomplish this spring. So
can I key in on one word you said just there,
sure.
Justin? The shuffle, the offensive line shuffle. Everybody kind of seems pigeonholed, with the exception of Wade and Miller. Everybody kind of seems pigeonholed to like their spot. So I wonder how much of a shuffle it actually is, because most years it is, right? Because there's almost so much desperation up front where it's like, we got to try everything. But I think there's a lot of value in the fact of like Gunner is a tackle. Jeremiah Wright is a guard. Jones has been a center for forever. Then the other two guys have been tackles, and it's like, okay, one of them is going to play tackle. Maybe the other one, whoever wins the right tackle spot, the guy who's second or runner up, whether it's Wade or Miller, maybe they compete with Cam Stutz for that right guard spot. But like, I don't know how much of a shuffle it's actually going to be.
Right.
I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where I'm at too. But again, you figured that out this spring, and then you solidify that rotation. So, center is going to be super important. Auburn went through like 3 different centers at one point last season, just trying to find the right guy at that position to help quarterback what was going on.
It was 3 centers, but also like 0 actual centers all at the same time.
Correct. Right. So who did you have projected as center, Zach, again?
Avery Jones, East Carolina transfer. Yep.
Yeah. Which again, I love that. I love him there. So it's going to be, I want to see how that works and the communication works from that position. Because center and left tackle are two of the offensive line positions that I'm really looking at to see, how solid are we there? And do they have entrenched starters at those positions, to kind of anchor this offensive line and move them forward from where they were last year, because the play there just wasn't good. Now, what we saw at the end of last season was they were better at run blocking than maybe we thought, because they ran for more yards on a Nick Saban coach team than anybody since he's been at Alabama, and I think it was 303 yards on the ground. And they moved the ball pretty effectively on the ground over the last 4 games of last season, with everybody knowing they were going to run.
Right.
So now Robby Ashford had something to do with keeping defenses honest when it comes to that. So we'll see how that math works out for the offensive line, depending on who they put back there at quarterback. But this is going to be, when I talk about left tackle, and who potentially wins that job, I still think that our guy, The quarterback.
Robby?
No. Why?
Holden?
Yes, Holden Geriner.
Okay.
Oh, his name fell out of my head for a second. I think that Holden Geriner has a shot to make a big splash this spring.
Yeah. And we'll touch on quarterbacks in just a second because, I think the take and the assumption that we may be making actually plays in Holden's favor.
But you got to protect him. You got to protect him, and you got to give a Holden. His game is different. His game is different than Robby's, and it's gonna be said of any quarterback, even Robby. But like, God, man, if you can just give this kid a little, the requisite amount of time, which in the SEC on average is about 2.4 seconds, right? Quarterbacks are getting rid of the ball, right? If you go back and you look at the history of time to throw and the most successful quarterbacks in our league, in 2.4 seconds on average, they have the ball out of their hands. At times, you have to give them 3 seconds to kind of find somebody else if a play is breaking down. But I think that if he can be decisive, Zach, and make and receivers can get open and run sharp routes, and the line can give him that little extra 0.2-3 seconds when he needs to, he can make a big splash this spring, and Hugh Freeze can have a real chance to evaluate what this offense can look like without a runner at quarterback. You don't have to be that guy if the protection is good enough.
Yeah. So just circling back to the offensive line, though, before we jump into quarterbacks, Mike G, I am interested in how, are there actually competitions at left tackle and center, as you mentioned, because both of those guys seem pretty they're coming for specific reasons. And I think you could say the same thing about Dillon Wade as you could about Gunner Britton. But this is it for Gunner Britton. Gunner Britton is an NFL project after this season. He is going to the draft next year, whether he makes it or not. Hopefully Auburn puts him in a better spot than he would be if he wouldn't have left Western Kentucky. But the Dillon Wade, and it's my understanding, Auburn wanted this guy. NIL was a big part of getting him here. That is my understanding. And so they're not going to waste that, right? They're not going to put him on the bench. So he's probably going to get a lot of extra attention in these snaps, but I just don't get the feeling that he is going to be I just don't think he's going to beat out Gunner Britton for that left tackle spot. Because I think some of this, Mike, is if you're Hugh Freeze and if you're Jake Thornton, you got to look at Gunner Britton in a different way. Right. Because if you can bring him in and he's a second-round draft pick next year, we talked about this 2024 class being important. Maybe it allows some of those 4- and 5-star offensive tackles to listen to you a little bit differently. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, going back to Dillon Wade, you're talking about some guy who's a 2-star prospect coming out of high school. Yeah. Right. 6'3", 285 coming out. And he went to Tulsa. I mean, this guy he had a chance. He's got a chance to do something, but I'm with you. I don't know that I see him beating out Gunner Britton. And this is why these spring battles are going to be so interesting to watch. Right. Now we're going to get a chance as media to go in and watch.
I hope so.
Some open part of practice.
That was the best part of the Harsin era is he just let us watch.
Yeah, right.
Let us watch. Yeah, that was great.
So we'll see if Hugh Freeze and company let us watch. Just watch. Just let us watch.
Just watch. Yeah.
A little bit of what they got going on there. But I'm interested to see these guys in person. Size, speed, tenacity, ferociousness in person. And kind of get a gauge of where they're at in terms of that competition, because when you bring a guy in highly touted like Gunner Britton, who, like you said, is an NFL project, but then you get a guy like Dillon Wade, and there's going to be some competition there. It'll just be interesting to see what direction they decide to go. And I really feel like everybody's got a blank. There are blank checks everywhere being handed out. And it's up to the players to fill their names in and write their amount and, write their own ticket this spring. So I don't think anything's going to be given. But there are some players who maybe just have a little bit of a leg up based on expectations and, where they were recruited and how they brought them in. Right. So whether they can hold on to that or not, we'll see.
All right, let's talk quarterbacks. Are we making a wrong assumption about the quarterbacks this spring? I'll explain what I mean in just a second. Right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Alumni Hall. If you are buying or in the market for any kind of new Auburn swag, Alumni Hall needs to be your place. Had some folks from Huntsville tweet at me. They went to the Auburn, North Alabama baseball game where they played at the home of the Trash Pandas, and Auburn absolutely waxed them. That was very, very fun to see. But got a tweet from a family that they were in their Auburn gear, and they're like, we went to the Alumni Hall store up in Huntsville, and we did a little name drop. Let them know that they were listening to Locked On Auburn, which I really, really appreciate. You don't have to do that, but I appreciate it. But yeah, they seem so happy. They seem so happy, and you can be just as happy. Just go to Alumni Hall or alumnihall.com and check out all the awesome stuff that they have, all officially licensed, all really, really good brand names, and it's going to last you a long time. So it's pretty cool stuff there. Alumnihall.com or physical stores in Huntsville, Opelika, and Auburn. Mike G of the War Rapport, our guest today. The assumptions here, where I think, and I could be in this spot too, but the assumption of like there's going to be 3 guys that are like actually getting starting quarterback opportunities and reps throughout spring. Robby Ashford, which is a no-brainer, Holden Geriner, and TJ Finley. What if TJ Finley's not looked at as a potential starter and they treat him, they like, you're leaving anyway. Why would we invest in you? And all of a sudden, what if they're just like, you're here because we need a certain amount of quarterbacks to facilitate practice. Right. Like that's kind of it. And I honestly don't know if they have enough. Honestly, TJ, Robby, Holden Geriner, and then Sawyer Pate is still on campus as a walk-on. So like you need dudes just to like run an actual practice to make it efficient. What if they approached, like, what if TJ's just handled that way? And he's the number 3 quarterback. He takes snaps a little bit more than Sawyer Pate does, but significantly less than Robby and Holden does. What if that's the way that this goes, Mike G?
Hugh Freeze has brought TJ's name up when he's talked about the quarterback position. He's twice I've had a chance to ask him directly about quarterbacks, and both times TJ's name came in as somebody who is going to, be going through spring practice. So I think that, what people have to remember about TJ is that he is, he's kind of a coach's guy, right? Like he knows how to talk to coaches. He knows how to say the right things. At the end of the day, it's what can he go out there and do? I think for TJ now, I have to assume, Zach, that there's some conversation that's been had at this point with TJ about what his plans are. Because if you're a coach and you're trying to project and plan, you got to know what guys are doing, right? So I'm assuming that they know at this point, what TJ's plans are. Now, we know Robby's here to compete. We know Holden's here to compete. There was a strong assumption made by a lot of people in the media, fans, that TJ was going to transfer, but now he's going through the spring. So
I still think that's true. I still think TJ transfers.
It may end up there, right? But he may want to test the waters here and see where he falls with this coaching staff, right? And
it just doesn't, Mike. Just talking to folks that are in those rooms right now as they're working out as a team and going through drills and things like that pre-spring, just doesn't sound like the effort's there. Just being honest. It just doesn't sound like he's really trying to get along with anybody. I think a lot of the team looks at him as a quitter from how last year ended. I don't think he's in the long-term plans. I really, really don't.
Yeah, I have not heard any of that. But I have not been having conversations about it either. So, at the end of the day, it's going to be something that's going to be watched because the quarterback position is always watched, right? So, but
totally.
What I don't want to see, here's what I don't want to see, no matter who's going through, is I don't want to see Holden get buried in this thing, man. Like, I don't want to see him take 13 reps this spring. I want to see this kid get second and some first team reps, and let's see what he can do.
Well, 3 guys can't do that.
Exactly. That's
so
kind
by
of
default,
point.
You're agreeing with me, right?
Yeah. That's kind of and that's where I'm at. I don't want to see Holden get buried on the depth chart this spring. I think it, because I want him to stay. And I think if he gets buried, like he's gonna start like, man, like listen, dude, like what do I got to do to move up to even just be the guy behind the guy, right? So I like Holden. I like his potential, and I think that guys just need to be clear. I mean, handle your business, and I think that that's probably happening right now. all these guys are trying to make business decisions about what's best for their future. And for TJ, it seems like, he's made the decision that it's in his best interest to go through the spring at Auburn, at least in some capacity. When did Demetrius Davis, Zach, transfer? He went through like a portion of the spring and then announced that he was transferring. Did he not?
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think that he kind of tested the waters in the spring and then was just like, hey, listen, there's no way I'm going to move up this depth chart here, so I'm out, right? Could we see the same thing with TJ? Is he going to do the same thing?
He entered the portal on March 23rd.
Right, okay, yeah, so he went through some portion of spring practice and then said, okay, yeah, it ain't here. So
because the window was different a year ago. Yeah.
Okay, so do we see maybe a little of the same with TJ is what I'm thinking, where he's going to test the waters in the spring, see where he's kind of at, and then make a decision from there.
The window timing is different though, right? So you can't just stop and enter the portal. You can do a tweet and say, I'm entering the portal on May 1st or whatever. You could do that.
Right, correct.
But teams can't legally. Teams can't reach out to you. There's a bunch of back channels right now as part of the problem if you think it's a problem. But so he, in theory, could do that. If 3 weeks into practice, he's like, you know what, I'm done. He could, in theory, do that, but he can't officially enter the portal. I mean, it's similar to what Landon King did last year. He announced he was in the portal, but he really wasn't in the portal yet. So
right, and it ended up returning. Right, so
that's right.
I just think we're going to see the coaches evaluate the way they're going to evaluate if some of the things that you're saying are true, then it may end up the way that you think it's going to end up quicker. But, if I got to believe that if he's choosing to go through the spring, he may not believe that's the way it's going, at least right now. And we'll see where it lands up, man. Coach Hugh Freeze has made it clear. He said, I've coached all of these guys at 0 snaps. Right. And he's looking for guys who don't end up on lists. He talked about what an SEC quarterback is to him very clearly.
Right.
A guy who doesn't get super down on himself when things go bad, and leads from the front. And then again, the list thing, it just kept coming up. Now let's talk about this list for a second, Zach. If Hugh Freeze was a coach last year, TJ would have ended up on a list. For the moped thing.
It's probably on a list now.
Right. And so, I mean, Hugh Freeze made it clear, I've got all these things to do. And if you're making me manage this other stuff and you're my quarterback, that's not a good thing.
No, thanks. Yeah.
Right. So we'll see. We'll see how it turns out.
Mike G, how can people give you some love, brother?
Give us some love over on YouTube by subscribing. We got lots of great content coming for you guys. Building Rapport Zach is back with a vengeance. Hugh Freeze, John Cohen, Stephen Pearl gave us a great interview. We released Johnny Harris this morning, and we've got some other interesting content coming for you guys. So all off season, Building Rapport is going to be in effect. And go over to YouTube, subscribe at the War Rapport on everything. You guys know the deal.
Be sure to find all of my written content at auburndaily.com, and we will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.